This is episode number 152 for the National Land Podcast. I am your host, Matt Christian, and Chief Marketing Officer for National Land Realty. Today, we're talking about Tax Code 180. We're talking with Alec and Carly Pavlinac of the Soil Tax Guys to make sure that you understand everything that you need to know about this useful code. Now, what this is a tax code that benefits soil excess fertility. If you don't know what that means, stay tuned. Sit back and enjoy, and you're going to learn about this. Okay, we are live. I get to throw on my announcer podcast voice and welcome Carly Pavlinac and Alec of ASM Labs, soon to be, or currently changing names to the Soil Tax Guys. This is in regards to the topic here is Tax Code 180. And if you are unaware, this is a way to gain tax incentives off of excess fertility. And I can talk my way through it and stumble and fall on my face. But the CEO of the company here, Alec can say it much better than I can. So Alec, walk us through Tax Code 180. What is it? How does it work?
Yeah, thanks, Mac. It's a really cool piece of the tax code that can really change the trajectory of someone's life and their financial situation. Essentially, what it is you as a land buyer are being rewarded for having a property that is in good shape from a soil fertility perspective. So 10,000 foot view, you buy a property, we do a soil test, we find out the amount of excess soil nutrients that are in the soil. We put a value on those nutrients using USDA fertilizer pricing reports, and you use that value as a deduction. This is very similar to deducting things like irrigation equipment, tile lines, buildings, fences. So really, this is another arrow in the quiver for savvy land buyers to really juice their returns. I mean, when you're talking about an asset class that generally only returns 2 to, if you're really lucky, 3% annual cash returns, you start throwing some of these values in depreciation and deductions at it, and you really can juice your returns.
Yeah, and so this tax code, I don't know, we've never talked about it, but do you know the history of this tax code?
So as far as we can tell, it's been in the code since the 60s. And really, it's only been in the last 10 or so years, 5 to 10 years, that people have kind of recognized it and started taking advantage of it. Every so often, in what we do, Carly and I will run across somebody that has used this since the 90s, or maybe they're a CPA that kind of had figured this out a while ago. But yeah, it's really just become popular in the last 5 years. And I really think part of that is just because, as the listeners know, parcels don't transition ownership very often, really. I mean, a farm in my area of the world, Central Illinois, may only change hands once in a lifetime or less. So if you don't know about it, it's easy to miss out on.
And what's, to your point, you mentioned savvy buyers, and in this case, I'm going to say savvy land agents too, to be able to inform buyers that this is a possibility when they buy land. I want to defer to Carly here, as the marketing person with you're the marketing ninja over there. You're the oracle. What what are you seeing in terms of, like, are people looking for this? Is this something that's like out there and people are actively looking for, or is this something that you're more getting the word out on?
Yeah, so some people are. Most of the time, we're in the education phase. Our biggest goal right now is to spread the word and let people know about this tax deduction, because it's a one-time tax deduction. If you don't use it, you lose it. And most of the time, people miss it. And it's such a small window where you can take the tax deduction. We have to do the soil test after closing and before the new owner applies fertilizer. So you have a small window of time. Otherwise, you've lost the opportunity. So our goal is to just let as many people know about this as possible so they can take advantage of it.
So we're talking about a tax code that's been around since the 60s. Nobody's used it. In the last 10 years, some people are starting to use it, and people are still not as aware. And like, I love that phrasing in the education phases of you're out there getting the word out to people. Carly, you just mentioned small window, and I'll defer to Alex on this. What is that window? Like, okay, I bought some land, and have I jinxed myself by not doing this before I bought it? Like getting the information before I bought it.
Sure. So we like to tell clients, and this is kind of not an awesome answer, but we like to say it just needs to be as close to the time of purchase as possible. So we need to have a soil test as close to the time of purchase as possible before you apply any fertilizer. That is really the key point here, because we are trying to establish a baseline of the soil fertility at the time of purchase. And if you apply fertilizer before a test, it kind of negates the test, or at least negates what was there on the property beforehand. Mm-hmm. So if you've bought a property in the last 3 years and you haven't applied fertilizer, we can generally find a way to help you out.
You totally took my thunder there, because I really wanted to play the technicality game and say, let's say haven't taken care of my land.
Yeah, sure, let's play them.
I was going to say, maybe I haven't taken care of my land. I bought it 2 years ago and I never applied fertilizer. Am I still in the running?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we would look back. We could look backwards at that. Yeah, and again, though, Mac, if you're not taking care of your land, how much excess soil fertility is there going to be, though, too?
Yes, that. To play the technicality game, though. Okay, so. And I feel like the vibe of the whole discussion around this topic, like it feels like an infomercial. Like, we have this slicer dicer, it's going to change your life. Like, this is such a wonderful thing. Why aren't you doing this? But it feels like that. It feels like one of those too good to be true scenarios for landowners. And in that sense, that's where I want to get into the nuts and bolts. And we had you on here before talking about the overhead view of what Tax Code 180 is, how your company works with it. But now that, you guys have taken off a little bit and working with more and more people, and now that everybody's listening to this podcast and we're so popular, everyone's going to come knocking on your door. And since everybody that's listening right now is going to share this podcast with your friends and family right now, when you click the link and share it with your friends and family on your social media platforms as you're listening, and I'm giving you some time to do that. Now that that's happening, you can share this whole thing. So Alec, we want to get into some specifics, and we talked beforehand because we try to prep you guys, and let's talk about some of these scenarios where somebody's come in and saved a boatload of money, and it's and the numbers we're talking here are like pretty astounding. So that's where I feel all infomercially, like, you wouldn't believe how much. No, it's really this is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So let's and because I want to promote National Land Realty, you work with the National Land Realty agent, and kind of tell us how this went down. We're going to refrain from names to keep anybody's names out of this and stuff. But we had an agent come to you with a piece of land, and tell me the story.
Carly, you want to?
Yeah.
Since you kind of took them over across.
Yeah. So we had the conversation with the agent, we had the conversation with the client, and went through that education phase of, this is what we do. We need to schedule soil tests for after closing. So we took the soil test. We got the results back, and we were like, oh, wow, these are really good. A lot of excess fertility. So it ended up being $1,845.29 per acre value, which in return got them around a $1.9 million tax deduction value.
So so for one, There's a lot of questions here. So for one, was the agents when the land agent contacted you, were they aware of exactly what you do, or did they basically come to you like, hey, I've got a farm and evidently you work with farms, tell me how to do this? Like how did that process go?
Not initially. So we met him, I believe, Alec, did we meet him at the National Land Conference?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we had that discussion there where we went through all the education, all of the, ins and outs, the questions about it. And so then he was ready for when that deal came along, and he was like, okay, I'm about to go under contract with, client, let's have a conversation with them so they can start to prepare. They can talk to their CPA about this and see if this is a good fit for their financial situation. And the phrase he uses, he was tickled pink by this. So
I feel like if your CPA said it wasn't good for your finances, you should probably fire your CPA. Is where it seems like.
The only case that it wouldn't be good is if you're not making any money. Then you don't need a tax deduction.
Then you don't need the deduction because you're not making money anyways. But if you're farming, that's like the entire goal, right? Like, so you're just a bad farmer at that point. No,
we've definitely, obviously, Mac, you want to talk about technicalities, that there's technicalities all the time, right? And sometimes it doesn't make sense. Like you said, if we could get you a $1.9 million tax deduction, but if you have no income to go against, like, it doesn't make sense. But to your point, with your CPAs and your accountants, that's part of what we do every day is we talk with accountants because frankly, a lot of them aren't familiar with this piece of the code. So if you're somebody out there that wants to do this and you run it by your accountant and they say, I've never heard of this, it's not a thing, like, you can take some solace in that because we work with accountants every day that have not heard of this. And then kind of once we give them some of the information, heck, sometimes all it is giving them the actual code, section 180 of the tax code. They read it and they're like, okay, light bulb goes off and they get it. So, but we have had situations where an accountant says, no, I'm not going to let you take this. And the client did decide to move their business elsewhere. So it does happen.
Well, yeah. And I was going to say before I get blown up for saying somebody that's not making money is a bad farmer, it's very hard to make money farming. And it's so that is one of the sort of things that you're working with. This is a deduction. This isn't cash in hand. Mm-hmm. Nobody's cutting you a check. This is just taxes that you're not going to have to pay. So you do want a profitable enterprise. And it takes a while to get up to speed with a farm, depending on what you're purchasing for equipment, what your overhead is, and like how you're managing it, maybe what your crop is, natural disasters. This is only going to benefit you if you are running some kind of profit. Is that right?
Yeah. And we get this question a lot of, I'm buying this new farm. Obviously, I don't have any income from this farm yet. It's your entire income. So let's say you have 7 other farms, it goes against your income as a whole. So we do get that question a lot.
So this could actually be part of sort of a diversification strategy. If you have a working farm and you were trying to cultivate new land, mm-hmm. This could actually benefit the existing land as you purchase new land.
Yeah.
To your point, Mac, that actually brings up a really good point. I like to talk about this client all the time. Really, one of my first clients I started working with, cattle rancher, Oklahoma, Kansas, and he's using this as a piece of his strategy to acquire more ranches. So he's obviously he had to bite that bullet the first time around. And by the time I started working with him, he had already acquired a couple ranches. So he kind of had the snowball rolling. But now what he's doing is he's using this piece of the tax code and what we're doing for him to take deductions and roll that savings, the amount that he would have paid in tax, he rolls that into his next ranch. And then uses section 180 on that ranch and rolls that into his next ranch. So it's really it's a neat piece of strategy, kind of this buy, rinse, repeat thing that I think clients are starting to catch on to.
Mm-hmm. And what was that number? It was something like millions, right, Alec?
Yeah. So yeah, kind of crazy, like $4.5 million in deductions off of one ranch.
Yeah, so he's really using this as a strategy to grow his business. And that's what we want people to know is this is a great thing to know because you need to use it to plan, to be able to figure out what do you want to do next and make your, I mean, all of these people work so hard. And that's what I love about this tax code is it rewards those people out there that are, farming and growing crops and running cattle. It helps them benefit. So we just really want people to know about it because they're working hard. So we want their money to work hard for them.
That is such a significant, very similar to, there was a gentleman I used to work with that purchased a small piece of land that had a ton of trees, harvested those trees, used those trees to pay for the lot next door and used those. And it created this snowball effect of like dimes on the dollar of getting land and being able to acquire new land, and ended up with this amazing hunting ranch that I got to go hang out at for a little bit. And it just made me jealous beyond reason. And this is kind of a similar thing where if you execute your plan strategically and one, I mean, you could even incorporate soil testing into the pre-buy process to see if you are going to get a deduction and what you could apply to it. Because if someone's run out of, fertile soil, then you're not going to get much of a deduction. Don't buy that land.
Yeah.
Or I want to go back to this one that you were just talking about, the $1,000 per acre deduction. How does that even happen? Like, what was the circumstances that, I mean, was there anything special about the land that made it so fertile? I mean, what was the
previous owner? I mean, just taking care of it.
Just took great care of it.
High levels of phosphorus, potassium, fertilizing on a regular basis, those type of things.
Yeah, and soil types certainly can play into it. So, if you're in a fertile, quote unquote, area of the country, like the likelihood is higher to have those higher valuations. But I mean, I think there's value. It's rare that we run into a situation that there's no value. I mean, it's very rare. So every part of the country is likely going to have some amount of value to it.
And Carla, you just mentioned what is being tested for. You mentioned phosphorus. You mentioned what was the other one? Oh, my short-term memory. Potassium. And so what all are the elements that you are testing for as you look for fertility?
Yeah. So phosphorus, potassium are the two big ones, of course. And this is where we kind of, the approach is different per state, actually. So every state has a land grant university. So that is the university that's making kind of all the agriculture. It's supposed to be the ag school. All the agricultural recommendations to farmers of that state. And every land grant university kind of has different guidelines for the nutrients. So some states only talk about phosphorus and potassium and maybe a couple others. Some talk about phosphorus, potassium, calcium, magnesium, iron, zinc, boron, copper, all of these micronutrients. So when we do our test, you get all the nutrients. Depending on what state you're in, those certain nutrients may or not get used because of how the university makes their guidelines. So I know that's kind of a roundabout way of answering your question, but we do go off of what the university's recommendations are to build our system.
Now I want to throw education under the bus. Are there any states that have analysis that makes it prohibitive to do something like this, to where they're measuring so many things that it's hard to hit the mark?
There are states that certainly make the threshold higher. So they because again, we're looking at excess here. When we do a soil test, we want the soil test levels, your soil test levels, to be higher than what the land grant university says is optimal. Sometimes those land grant universities are pretty high. But it's rare that it eliminates someone from taking advantage of something.
You mentioned at one point working with a client that they made good use of poop. This is just a unique instance, and I was curious about sort of how that benefited the next buyer.
Yeah, so we've had every so often, you'll get a situation where, maybe it's an auction or maybe it's just a private sale, and the client will call and say, hey, I just bought this farm. It used to be a hog operation, or it used to be a dairy, or it still is a dairy, whatever, chicken manure, whatever. And so we know that the fertility levels are going to be very high. And so that's kind of knowing that prior to your purchase, right? It's kind of part of the due diligence. Hey, I know that the fertility levels are going to be high because these previous owners were probably spreading their excess manure on their own fields because it's easy, it's close, it's quick, and it's a free source of fertilizer. So we've had some situations where, just earlier today, I was on a phone call with a gentleman that purchased a property in a previously a hog operation, and I think the per acre value on his property was $6,500. And this all was all coming from manure, basically.
That was the tax deduction on the property.
That is the value of the fertility. Yes.
And that's not as, we don't get those as frequent. Normally, our average is $500 per acre. So that was just an extreme case where it's a lot of excess. But yeah, it was cool to see.
$6,500 per acre and then how long do you have to make this deduction? So it's not like a 1-year thing. You better make a heck of a lot of profit in the first year to get this to pay off. How does this sort of work out in a timeline?
Yeah. So there's kind of 3 ways that, and again, this is, all of this will be up to your CPA or accountant to determine how they're going to make this work for you. I'm not an accountant. We are not accountants. We're not financial advisors. But there are 3 ways that accountants will typically help their clients take this deduction. So number 1 is they're going to take the deduction all in 1 year. Okay, so in that case, yes, you're right. You want a heck of a lot of income to offset there. The second most common way is that they will spread it out over 3 years. So, they'll take 60% the first year, 30% the second year, and then that remaining 10% the third year. That's a pretty typical way that accountants will spread it out. The third way is, so in our reports, we actually provide what's called a useful life period or an exhaustion period. So this is how long will those excess nutrients last you? How long are you going to not have to apply fertilizer for and still grow good crops? And so we actually do the math and provide those calculations so that if an accountant wanted to say, okay, this nutrient will last you 7 years, so we're going to take it over 7 years. This nutrient's going to take it 2 years, so we'll take it over 2 years. So we do provide those calculations as well, which is really important.
And that's kind of the basis of what this is, right? This is somebody, it's a tax deduction, basically reimbursing someone for the incentive of fertilizing in the future. Is how I'm guessing that kind of, because you're going to eventually incur the cost. I don't know. I'm just trying to play this out in my head.
Yeah, it's an asset to the property. It's money that you're not going to have to spend to fertilize your crop.
Mm-hmm. Just like if you were to buy a tractor, that's an asset that you would. It's kind of similar thought process.
I got you. And you get to depreciate that expense. Now, how often do representatives of clients talk to you before sale to check on the fertility of a piece of land if they're going to market?
I think Carly probably has a couple stories about that.
Yeah, I mean, if they're going to market and are you talking about on the sales side? If they're
On the sales side, if you're selling the land,
if they want to sell, yeah. So we do get that, coming up from time to time. We actually did have somebody that we worked with where they sold a property because of this tax deduction. They got their client to, hey, do a couple of tests and figure out what's there. And the client purchased the property because of this tax deduction. So it actually helps the agent, get a deal through because of this. And he said without this, they wouldn't have bought it.
was that a national land agent? I'm really hoping it was.
Unfortunately, on that one, it was not.
All right. Come on, guys. All
Now,
right. Let's get this together, national land.
Yeah, one of the other cool use scenarios is the auction scenario as well.
Mm-hmm.
And you obviously need to be careful as an auctioneer in how you're marketing this. But we do have situations where we'll make an estimate, like the auction company or the broker will do some tests, or maybe the seller has soil tests already. And so we'll take those tests and do an estimate and say, hey, assuming that after we do all of this work again, these are probably the values you could expect. And brokers and auctioneers are using that as kind of a, like Carly mentioned, a little bit of a marketing tool to say, hey, like Mr. Buyer or Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, this is something that you should think about and take into consideration for the purchase of this property. So it can be a little bit of a marketing tool.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's, when you told me about this thing the first time, and then it was reiterated to me when you guys came to our conference, and this is because I know a lot of you listening are agents in the land industry, so I'm throwing this out there as a not so subtle 2x4 upside the head thing, that there's an opportunity if you pick up ag land and bring it to market. If you run soil fertility tests in advance, you can discuss that as a marketing tool to get in front of potential buyers of there is a tax incentive tied to this property due to the excess fertility. It's just one more tool in your belt to be able to move that thing off the market. I mean, it's a pretty powerful tool.
Sure. Well, and at the end of the day, just taking a soil test, it will put you above and beyond 75 or 50 to 75% of the other brokers out there. I mean, it's almost rare that it seems rare that an auction or a sale for ag land would include a soil test. I mean, just by having that could mean a lot to a buyer anyway. Just even if they're not even thinking about Section 180, having a soil test is a nice little tool as well for a broker.
Yeah, it's definitely best practice, whether you're doing Section 180 or not, to, when you're buying a new piece of land, to have the soil test done so you know what's there. You can make decisions rather than guessing,
And I feel like that's another one too, that, not just for real estate agents that are working with land. Like if you are a landowner and, we are coming up on the highest transfer of land in the history of mankind, from older generations to younger generations, and you got some bad knees and this game is just too much hard work and you're looking at getting out and you want to move that land, throw some fertilizer on the thing and make sure that place is primed, and then go to market with it and ensure yourself a better retirement, right? Like that is one piece of the puzzle that is huge value to the agents that are working with clients and trying to find buyers, huge for people that are trying to sell their land and get the most they can out of it. I mean, there's a whole slew of things here that is like, this should be a part of anybody who's going to market with a chunk of land that grows some kind of food, right? Like this is like, now in terms of ag, doesn't apply to timber, right?
Mm-mm.
Correct.
Has to be food producing.
That's a good way to put it, Mac. I like that.
Yeah.
And you mentioned cattle, because I was thinking originally, I was thinking crop yield, right? Like, but you mentioned cattle ranches because you're talking about grazing.
Yeah.
I didn't apply it mentally to that. I was like, oh, it's got to be fruits and vegetables. But like, oh no,
Yeah, cattle,
Alfalfa.
chicken, anything ag purposes. So just not hunting or timber.
Got you. And as you work with clients, these cases, these where you're talking of $6,500 per acre is like that would, I'm still trying to get my head around that. And national land agent, $1,000 per acre working with you all. How often, and you said average around 500, how often do these anomalies pop up? And I'm going to call them anomalies because they're not the norm.
The one that we talked about earlier, the $1,845 per acre, and then we did another one with National Land, and that one was $1,751.57 per acre. So, it really just depends. We know when we have the conversation and they say, hey, do you know if the previous owner fertilized? When they say yes, we know it's going to be good. I hope. We haven't had a situation where that was the case and it wasn't good. So it's really just asking those questions of like, was it taken care of beforehand? Let's do a test and see what we're working with.
Yeah, the anomalies that the 3,500s, the 6,500s, those pop up every so often, and it's almost always because it's coming from like a hog operation or a dairy or something like that. So not often, but if those properties are transacting in your area, definitely a good one to keep your eye on if you're in the buying market.
Yeah, I would say definitely in the thousands is normally often. That's normally what we see.
So you're saying that anybody looking to sell their land needs to start a hog operation before sale. If I'm hearing you right.
It wouldn't be a bad move. No. You can handle the smell.
Yes. So okay. If I'm looking at getting into this and I just don't know where to start, obviously I need to reach out to the soil tax guys, but what am I looking at in terms of paperwork, in terms of liability? Is there risk of audit? How does that all play into this?
Yes. So, you reach out or we reach out. Carly is amazing at getting with buyers as soon as she finds out, as soon as they transact, and she's with them. But so really from the client side, we obviously need to know where the property's at to go out and take the soil samples. So the lift from a client's perspective, we need a map, and really a lot of this work is what your broker can do this for you. So you tell your broker to handle this with Carly, and it's pretty well going to be handled. So we need a map. We'll go out and do the soil testing. We will do once we get those soil test results back, we do a no obligation consultation. So this is an estimate. I look at the soil test results and I say, okay, you can reasonably expect X dollars per acre in value. If that's worth your time, that's when we would move forward with the official report. We create the whole official report. Obviously send that to you. If you want us to work directly with your accountant, we just need their contact information. Your accountant pulls those numbers from our report, and it's a done deal. So it's a pretty easy lift from the client perspective, and that's really what we're striving for. We don't want to make this something hard for someone to take advantage of.
Yeah, and we always ask people afterwards, give us feedback about the process. In the past, 3 people we've asked, they're like, no, it's super easy. Basically, once I gave a thumbs up, you guys handled everything and just, it was done. But to answer your question earlier about the liability side of it, there's always a chance of an audit, and it could be triggered by this. It could be triggered by anything else that you do. If that were the case, we would come and represent you and, talk to, that's why we are so keen on the rules and how we go about doing it, and doing the soil test with, GPS coordinates, all these types of things to make sure that your report is locked up. These are the exact numbers. This is based on science, and it's to a T tied back to the code. So that way there's nothing to argue with there. Like, these are the facts and this is what it is. We have not had any clients to date to get audited, but I mean, that's not to say we won't eventually. But yeah, we're there to, that's part of what you pay for when you get us to come and help get you this tax deduction.
What's your average process timeline from contact to test to you're done?
Yeah, depends on weather. Ideally, it's normally 2 to 3 weeks, but if it snows or rains,
this isn't like a month's thing where you're waiting to hear back from people and there's paperwork to file. This is weeks and you're done.
Yeah. If the
Could be. we had a couple clients that bought in like December in the middle of Nebraska.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think happened there?
Lots of snow.
Yeah, lots of snow. So
you're out there with an ice axe trying to get to the soil, and yeah,
definitely. And I will say, just to bring that up, talking about like horror stories, quote unquote, is we will see, during fertilizing season, this just passed, it's tax season and fertilizer season where everyone's throwing down fertilizer. This is such a time sensitive tax deduction that, we did have somebody that was like, yes, I want to do this. Let me just talk to my CPA and I'll get back to you guys. They waited a little bit too long and they forgot and applied fertilizer. And we're like, you missed it. You can't go back and do it. You've lost the opportunity to get this tax deduction. And they were so upset. They're like, there's nothing you can do. We're like, no, it has to be after closing. We do the soil test and then they can spread fertilizer, do whatever they want. But we have to have that stamp in time to know this is what your soil levels were when you purchased it. So that's, something we like to emphasize, especially this time of year.
And that's definitely not to be mean, because believe me, we want to work with everybody, but we do this for the client's protection, because at the end of the day, we are trying to mitigate their risk in the event of an audit. I do not want to sit across from an IRS auditor and have them say, hey, we found this fertilizer bill on X date and your soil tests are X date later. I just, it's not gonna, I'm not gonna get in trouble. Our client's the one that's gonna get in trouble. And so I just want it to be as low risk as possible. And we want to mitigate that risk for our clients.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's back to when you were talking timeline before, it was like, oh man, we're back to the infomercial thing. Cause it's like couple weeks could change your life, right? Like that's like,
yeah. Just call now.
Just call now. Just do the thing. Well, okay. Back into sort of picking through the finer details. What about inherited lands? Does that qualify as a new owner and can qualify for a new fertility test and filing for tax code 180 if it is handed to an heir?
Has to be purchased, but
has to be purchased.
Talk to your CPA. There could be situations, but it needs to be like a purchased property.
Yeah, it's the inheritance one is a sticky one, and we do like to say, like any client that comes to us, we say, the very next phone call that you have needs to be with your accountant. And so the inheritance one is a little tough.
That was like, I could imagine someone trying to do the whole like selling it for $1 thing and seeing how that stuff exists. I'm not a CPA, but I'll let a CPA dive into that one and see if they're going to get in trouble. But
right, exactly.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, we're providing an opinion of value we are providing an opinion of value of the soil nutrients at the time of property transfer. No more, no less. And
that's good. It keeps you out of liability on that one.
Right.
I could appreciate that. How many of these are you doing? So you went through last year doing this. We did the podcast last year. How many of these have you done since then? How many around are you doing per year?
A lot.
It's quite a bit. Yeah, we've been super blessed. I mean, it's just been, in your first I've been offering this service since 2022, and obviously, kind of with that, like we talked earlier, more and more people are taking advantage of of this piece of the tax code just in the last 5 or 10 years. We've just been so blessed with the growth and really the clients that we work with. Carly didn't come from the ag world, ag industry at all. And like every day she talks about just like how different the ag clients are in a good way. Just so nice. And
So nice.
like, you feel like you're kind of making friends a lot of times with your clients. And I know this isn't really answering your question, but like we are working with a lot of new people every day and making friends every day.
And I will add, I did go to an ag school. I went to NC State, go Pack. So I did take some ag classes while I was there.
Oh, I completely coming, from a marketing profession and working in a field that takes in ag and land. It is the clients and the people you work with are so different than what you're used to in like a stuffy environment. That it's like it is a breath of fresh air, and it's good people, and it's nice.
Yeah.
It is. The people are so nice. It's so genuine, down to earth. It's a great industry.
Well, you're also there to save them a bunch of money, so I'm guessing they're extra nice with it.
Usually you're not upsetting too many people generally.
Yeah, they're not stomping on toes unless they already fertilized, and then
Then
it's not
next time.
Awesome. Well, hey, I want to be respectful of your time. I know y'all have a lot of clients to get to and everything. Listeners, how can listeners find you guys? I was trying to tie that together and I went backwards. So
yeah, send us an email. You can email me, Carly, at soiltaxguys.com, or pick up the phone, give me a call, 984-344-6169.
Excellent. I will have that information in the notes for the show. And everybody, if you're an agent working with agriculture, if you're an agricultural landowner and you're looking to buy or sell, either way, this is something that you want to check out absolutely every single time any purchase is made. This is just something that there's no downside to it.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you both. Very much appreciate your time. Good to have you on again.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mac.
Thanks for having us.
All right. Take care. This concludes episode number 152 for the National Land Podcast with Alec Bean and Carly Pavlinac of the Soil Tax Guys talking about Tax Section 180. You can learn more about land ownership and the buying and selling of land at nationalland.com, and make sure to subscribe to this podcast and review it. Make sure you don't miss any of our next episodes, and I'll see you next time.